Welcome to Cityside Spiritual Community YouTube channel. I'm John, and I got a chance to sit down and talk with our very own Reverend Russ. And we had a great conversation, and he has some great insight about what is going on and how we should process that. So here's Russ and our great conversation. So, with everything that's going on, we've got COVID, we've got the election, we've got people worrying about prosperity and power, people worrying about wholeness and health. Um, what would you what would you say is the best recommendation that you would share about holding the consciousness in the right and the best light and the best attitude?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the key word in that is consciousness and recognizing that we all have, even though we share this one mind, this one divine mind that we talk about in our teaching, um, we all have our own unique ways that our consciousness shows up in the world. So I would almost say, like, whatever is best is going to be different from person to person.
Mm.
And I think my invitation would be to check in with our feelings. Like, how are we feeling when we're reading the news, when we're seeing what's going on with the polls, when we are seeing what's happening with the economy or within the world in general? Um, because our feelings will show us the way. The problem that I've seen in the world so much, especially recently, is that there's a lot of this going on, but not a lot of this going on. So we have to find our way back to that emotional body because what I found in my own journey is that my emotions are always right. They always tell me exactly what it is that I need to know in a situation. And it's my head that gets in the way that either puts a block so I don't have to feel my emotions or creates a story around them. So then I become the victim or I become the victimizer or, yada, yada, yada. So um, yeah, I think that would be the invitation is like we have to look within. We have to take care of our consciousness first. It's kind of like you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help somebody else when the plane is crashing. You're not doing anybody any favors by, ignoring what's going on within because that's totally valid. And what's going on within is going to impact how we interact with everything that's around us.
That's very powerful. I really like that idea of, taking that internal temperature, that internal inventory. And then what would you say? So let's just say that I do that. How would you, or what would you say about taking that even deeper so that I can change it from being in a place of feeling stress and anxiety into a place of peace? What would be that process?
Yeah, well, again, it's going to be probably show up different for every person who's doing that. But what I found in my own practice is that the first actually feel my feelings. And I emphasize the word feel because we're not creating a story about our feelings. We're not judging our feelings. We're not even trying to label our feelings. It's just going within being like, oh, I'm feeling this tightness in my shoulders, or I'm feeling like this thing in my stomach, or I'm feeling this thing around my heart, and just sitting there and being in sort of a passive receptive state. And that's really critical because, we have to let go of our brain, our ego's desire to try and control the experience. Like our ego wants to fix something, but really there's nothing to fix. The only thing that we're doing is allowing that whatever it is to sort of come up and go through its natural process. And then once it's done, that's when we can begin to reframe. Oftentimes when I do this type of practice, I'll find out that the thing that triggered me in the world really had absolutely no power over me. It was really I got triggered because I had this sort of, past experience or past trauma that looked very similar to the thing that happened right now. And that's what's actually playing out because I never actually healed this thing from like years and years and years ago. And most people have garbage from our past that we've not actually worked through. So when we let that come up and we can understand it, we can sort of be in the feeling tone of it. Then after that, we're in a better place to reframe. Um, in the science of mind teaching, we talk about reframing that circumstance, right? Like circumstances do not have any power over us, and that's true. But the reason I like this process is because when we're trying to reframe, even though we haven't taken the time to understand where those feelings are coming from, then oftentimes we are still reframing from whatever that past fear, that past doubt is. And that can get a little funky when we talk about things like the law of attraction and what we're putting out into the universe with our consciousness, because we may say the words, we may say, I am whole, perfect, and complete, but within our subconscious, within our emotional body, what's actually going on is like, oh no, you haven't actually let me heal. And that kind of like is sort of like the pepper that you've put on the mashed potatoes of your consciousness right there that, it changes the flavor. So I don't know if that's making sense or not. But that's kind of like, I think of like reframing. We've got to do our work first. We've got to like let go of our clinging, our grasping to these past traumas before we can start to really do an effective reframe. Like I emphasize the word effective because I want us to use this power for good in an effective way and not to, I don't want people to spin their wheels if they don't have to.
That makes so much sense to me because I think what I hear you saying is whatever it is that I'm reacting to, that I'm reading in the news or whatever it may be, is probably an awareness that's coming to me of something that I need to work on, some
Yep.
that has always been there or I've been carrying around for a while that really needs to be worked on. So seeing that emotional reaction as like, oh, that's the thing I'm working on now.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I kind of look at it like maybe an example. Um, plenty of people are triggered by Donald Trump. That's totally understandable. And for me, if I have to go into myself and sort of be like, all right, I'm feeling this. When have I felt this in the past? And just like kind of let the feeling sort of guide me and tell me. And maybe I'll go back and be like, oh, yeah, he's reminding me of like, a way that my dad didn't show up at some point in my life, or my mom didn't show up, or like this weird way that they acted that, when I was a kid, I didn't understand it. And it can give us a lot of clarity to realize that not absolving anybody of bad behavior if they trigger us, but kind of gives us something a little bit deeper because otherwise we're sort of dealing with the surface condition. We're trapped in the condition, and that's sort of the thing that I really want to encourage us to get out of is this sort of idea that we're always at the effect of life as opposed to really having the answers that we need within us and the healing that we need is within us. It's not something that anybody can even give us. Feel
Right.
like I'm rambling there, but yes.
It's great. So it's a call to really go deeper. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
what I'm saying. It's like not the superficial, but really it is that deepness where the answers are going to be found.
Yeah, like one of the things that I've really been fascinated by, especially this year, and it's fascinated me so much that I'm probably gonna take it into writing a book about it, if I can motivate myself to do that, because I got my own healing to do. Excuse me, but there's so much anger in the world. I'm sure, John, you've probably seen how much, like, there's just vitriol upon vitriol, from like people who have got super legitimate grievances, in the world, and people with maybe less legitimate grievances, yet they are still angry. This anger has feels like it's defined our society, and that's really, feels very dangerous to me that this is the sort of consciousness that has been normalized
Mm.
in the United States, and not just the United States, but we're probably the poster child for it right now. So I wonder what it is that has kind of filled us up with this anger because like no like I can't give you my anger, nobody can give you your anger, or nobody can give me my anger. Our anger comes up ourselves, our emotions are our own, we own them. So what is it that's going on that just feels so bitter and angry? And me into my, own forgiveness practice where I have to be like, all right, who in my life have I not been, in this atmosphere of letting go, of forgiving, of feeling my feelings and then letting them go. But I wonder more largely, like, what is going on in the world right now? Because, the anger, I'm probably preaching to the choir here. The anger ain't really working.
Mm.
That the anger just creates this us versus them, and like there's always a winner and a loser in us versus them, and that really, in my mind, means that everybody's losing. So, how do we move past this anger? And I think one of the ways that we do is we actually sit and we feel, where is it coming from? Why am I being triggered? Why is this coming up in me? Why am I so angry about something that quite literally is outside of my control? And it might even be the fact that something is outside of our control that is causing our anger. Because we humans like to be in control of everything. Um, it's kind of, I think that's the universe is giving this sort of really loud invitation to turn and find out, like, why do we feel like our world is not working, you know and I think the answer is different for every person, but we sort of have to ask ourselves that question.
Yeah, and so that makes me think when you're talking about anger and then spinning your wheels, then it seems like, sure, then you just sort of stay there. You can never get out. You can never get to the next thing. You can never get past it.
Nope, you can't, because anger is just an emotion. Like, anger never solves anything. It's all emotional energy at the end of the day. And the question is, what do we do with it? you know like, when that anger comes in, I have the question I can ask myself, like, where is this coming from? What is it doing for me? And I think that's a really valid question that people will have some fascinating answers if they ask themselves, like, how is this anger working for me? Because the reality is that anger might actually be working for them in some way or another.
Yeah,
It might feel safe. It might feel normal. Like, if I've been angry my entire life, and I'm speaking as somebody who has been angry for most of his life, thank God I found Science of Mind and I found a really great therapist. But, losing that anger, letting it go, is not something that happens overnight. So it can feel scary to let go of that. That anger might be something that's creating a defense. It might be something that's sort of putting up a barrier between an unsafe feeling world. I think it was last month, I gave a talk about, we live in a safe universe, but man, you sure wouldn't believe it by the way that people act. Um, it's really hard for us to get to these spiritual principles when we haven't taken that time to really dive into what's going on in our emotional body and what's actually blocking us, not just from like thinking and like knowing that yes, God is all that there is. It's very easy for me to go up there in my mind and to build a whole logical case for that. It's a lot harder to take that and then actually start to live it and embody it.
right.
And that's kind of what I feel like the world is needing for us to get out of our heads and get into the embodiment of this teaching, because then we're living our lives in alignment with that, as opposed to thinking our lives in alignment with that.
That's fantastic. So, the counsel that I'm hearing you started with, and it's really resonating for me, is to feel what you're feeling and don't
Yep.
run away from your feelings.
Yep.
And then take it into prayer, meditation, take it into your spiritual practice.
Yeah, and I would even add to that, know that we are never alone. This is something that took me a long time, especially because I came from a very sort of like anti-Christian, anti-God outside of me sort of upbringing, if that makes any sense. And my invitation would be, that when we're doing this work, we can imagine that there is some sort of a divine avatar that is there with us to help make it more safe. Because, like I said, when we're dealing with our own anger, our own, like, unresolved traumas and feelings and things like that, it can be really scary. But what I know is because we are all part of this one divine mind. If God is all that there is, then God can be your best friend sitting across from you while you're talking through and just, holding that space and giving you lots and lots of divine hugs when you need lots and lots of divine hugs because it's hard. None of us have to do it alone. That's why we have this community at Cityside. That's why we have practitioners who are there to pray with you. Why we have ministers who are there to offer this kind of counsel and to simply just create that space to be heard. You know, um, with COVID going on right now, it can feel really isolating. And I know I felt the isolation. I don't know anybody at all who has not felt it. And I have friends, kind of the toll that the isolation's taken. But what I've found for myself is that I go out into nature, I go for a hike, I go for a walk, and I start to see and I start to feel the divine all around me. And I feel less alone, and it feels more safe to go through the work that I need to do, which never ends. Sorry, I wish I could say that, there is a period at the end of the sentence that is our journey in life, but there isn't one. There might be like, a semicolon or some hyphens or a dot, 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 but there's never a period at the end. We're always doing this work. Um, Having that sense that, it's always within us, we're the ones who get in the way of actually being able to feel it. And that's not something we should judge ourselves about either, by the way. It's just, kind of the way we're all brought up. We don't, you know nobody gives us a handbook for reality. So we're just kind of all figuring it out as we go along. And yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. And I have to say, Russ, just sitting here and talking to you, and I've had this experience before, but it is just like getting divine hugs all the time. So I really enjoy our time together. I really am so grateful for you and so grateful for you spending some time talking with me today.
Yeah, thanks, John. No, I appreciate it to connect.
So thank you, Reverend Russ, for taking time to talk with me and providing that deep and powerful insights. Those deep and powerful insights. I can talk. Um, so if you're feeling the need for prayer or support, you can always reach out to us by emailing Cityside at prayer@cityside.me and just put your prayer request in the body of the email. Or if you need someone to reach out to you, contact you, you can put that in the email as well. We'll try to set that up. I hope that you are enjoying these videos. I hope that you're having a very blessed day. I know that you are blessed and know that you are one. And so with many, many blessings, see you at the next video.